a big welcome and a warm welcome to all our panelists, and thanks again for joining us for this discussion. Perhaps we can start with some quick intros. So, Tom, I can see you're nice and ready there. So perhaps if you can just give us a quick introduction of who you are and what your role is.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with the other panelists. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter Program Office. My responsibility is all of the information technology, information systems that go to support the development, production, and sustainment of the F-35 aircraft worldwide for the U.S. services, as well as our 13 partners and foreign military sales customers around the world.
Thanks, Tom, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us. For context, we had Tom speak with us in Washington, D.C. at a government-focused event that we had last year when in-person events were actually a thing. So it's good to see you, Tom, and pleasure to have you back with us. Another familiar face of the Digital Transformation Conference Series is that of Jeanethe Falvey, who's the Chief Digital Officer from City of Boston. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. On the name, I have forgotten on that one, so perhaps you can introduce yourself and correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Sure. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yeah.
Great. It was warning me that it wouldn't. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanethe Falvey. You said it right, Chris. It's great to see you again. And yes, I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the City of Boston. I've been with the city for 3 years now. Previous to that, I had a 4-year stint at National Geographic, and before that, nearly a decade at the Environmental Protection Agency. So I bounced out of government and came back in to support the local level. And my job is basically to oversee the city's user experience across all of our digital applications, all of our platforms, making sure that the outreach is accessible and as good as it can be. So that's me.
Nice, lovely to see you again, and thanks for joining us. Real pleasure to have you back. And Gaurav, a new face for us at the Digital Transformation Series. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining us. How are you today? It'd be great if you could give us a quick intro.
Doing great. Thanks, Chris. Again, can you also give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, yeah. Cool, because I think I also got the same error message of the mic. So, Gaurav Jaiswal, I'm the Chief Product Owner at Digital Channels and Experience Group at Pearson, Pearson Education. So Pearson, for those of you who may have heard of it, it's the world's leading digital learning company with about 22,000 employees in 70 plus countries. We provide mostly learning content assessment and digital services to learners, educators, colleges, schools, employers, and governments globally. Our goal is to help equip these learners with the skills that they need to enhance their employability prospects and to succeed in the changing world of work. I'm personally responsible for leading global e-commerce businesses at Pearson with a very learner-centric direct-to-consumer model. Prior to this, I spent about a decade at SAP, where I co-founded SAP Digital, which was SAP's B2C digital business unit, which was set up with the vision to enable anyone in the world to discover, try, buy, and consume SAP and partner products in a completely self-serve digital manner.
Nice. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us. And finally, with you, Mo, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris. Yeah, let me introduce myself briefly, guys. So my name is Mo. I'm the co-founder of Wrk Technologies. As a brief background, I'm a tech entrepreneur, have been for the last 20 plus years. My focus has always been to try and identify areas of technology that are nascent, that are still sort of where the wave is starting to catch on. Prior to this current company, I co-founded a company called SweetIQ, which was in the digital local marketing space, helping manage online listings and reputation management for enterprise accounts over 200,000 locations all over the world. I traditionally work with venture capital folks. We try and find opportunities where there's a gap in the marketplace, and we build technology solutions for that. My most recent foray now is in the digital transformation and business automation industry, where about a year ago, I co-founded a company called Wrk, where we are trying to streamline how companies deploy automation within their organization. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Nice, thanks, and a warm welcome to you, Mo. Thanks for joining us. So I think a good place to start, and where I often kind of start these panel sessions, is if we could just have another quick run through with our opening question is kind of what does digital transformation mean to you? It's very different to you know, various people working within business transformation, so it's always good to get kind of a definition and where you're coming from with that. So perhaps if we could start again with you, Mo, and work our way backwards to the start there again.
Very well. Yeah. You know, for me, I have these two different lenses that I look at things through. One through organizations that I've worked with and for. And so prior to this company, my former one was acquired by Gannett in the United States. You know, so moving from a startup setting into a 14,000 employee organization and watching what digital transformation meant there, and then obviously doing it again at a startup phase of a venture-backed company now. You know, I think in general, when we talk about certain terms, be it digital transformation or others, it tends to be a little bit buzzwordy. You know, it means so many different things to different people. For us, whether it was large company or small company, I've always focused our understanding around truly trying to enact change in people's perspectives around embracing technology to be able to do meaningful things with it and not fall prey to, you know, big buzzwords like AI or machine learning because they think it's a silver bullet that will solve things. So for me, digital transformation is truly about helping individual players as well as actors of change within the organization embrace technology to be able to have a meaningful, you know, implementation that is tangible to people, to the employees within those organizations.
Nice, good answer. Thanks, Mo. And then yourself, Gaurav?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So digital transformation to me is the fundamental reimagination of business in the digital age. It's a foundational change in how an organization delivers value to its customers, partners, and employees. It transcends traditional roles like sales, marketing, and customer service, and sort of marks a radical rethinking of how an organization uses platform, product, processes, and people to fundamentally change the business performance. Mm-hmm. If you take Netflix as a prime example of digital transformation, I mean, it started as a mail order service and you know, disrupted the brick and mortar video rental business, but then quickly innovated its way into wide scale video streaming. And today, you know, it's competing with the traditional broadcast and cable television networks and production houses all at once by offering a growing library of on-demand content at hyper competitive prices. So that's like, you know, digital transformation in action right there, because it gives unprecedented insights, you know, into the consumer habits as well, leveraging the underlying tools and technologies. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes digital transformation I've seen being driven by a dedicated CDO, Chief Digital Officer. In some cases, it could be the CIO or consumer experience head, or at times, frankly, the CEO itself. But fundamentally, some of the core principles that I've seen being applied successfully to drive a digital transformation, first and foremost, set a bold vision. Identify what your North Star is based on exponential thinking instead of incremental improvements. I came across this guiding principle a long time ago where, you know, it said, if you can imagine a world where XYZ can happen and you can replace that XYZ with whatever is pertinent to your world, then it might as well be you who does it as opposed to some other company or other individual. Mm-hmm. Second is a close symbiotic partnership between business and tech, which is absolutely vital to drive a successful transformation. And then finally, agile execution. So fail fast, fail forward, quickly repivot, and continue to make progress. So that, in essence, is the encapsulation of digital transformation in my mind.
Nice, good answer. And yourself, Jeanethe?
Yeah, so obviously digital transformation is not a point in time that starts or stops, but for me, it's really about that evolution and how your organization is changing and how willing they are and open the organization is to that change. So at the city, we've seen a lot of this. COVID really pushed this to the forefront in the past year. Mm-hmm. But the question I always fundamentally ask is your organization getting better through the use of tools? Are employees becoming more collaborative with digital tools? Is the experience that employees are having internally getting better, and is the experience for your external audiences getting better as a result of these? And you can end up piling a lot of things on. So what I also always say is that it's important to make sure that the tool set that you do have is efficient and effective, and you're not just adding to the pile and you're not just forgetting all the legacy weight. I mean, there's really no way you can. It's probably in your face because of maintenance concerns, but you really do have to do a lot of that cleanup, that historical cleanup along the way, so that you can run faster when you do adopt something new.
Nice, thank you. And back with you, Tom, your interpretation and understanding of digital transformation.
First I'll say, yeah, what they said. It's coming at the tail end of a question like that. It's each Mohannad, Gaurav, Jeanethe have touched on all of the points, everything from the big vision up front to embracing the technology, to changing the individuals, to identifying where the value is, and to measuring that the achievement of that value. Within our program, and within the government and DoD acquisition as a whole, we have books and books of regulation upon regulation that we have to follow and we have to move forward with. And we move at the light speed of snails. And in digital transformation, I like to just take the word digital out of it. And it's transformation, and transformation of the organization. How you approach the work that you're doing, and what are the tools, the people, and the policies that are able to transform that work that you have. In the talk that I gave last year, I touched on 65 different applications with 150 different sources of data that were not integrated in any way. And we have many manual processes. And it's getting the organization to understand what we're talking about, the embracing the technology that can help you, and also talking about the changing people and the changing organization to really get the effectiveness out of those tools that are there. So changing the mindset and changing the people within the organization, so that not only is it a new tool or a new database or a new platform that is available, but the individual and the steps and the process that that individual follows changes, and it becomes more efficient.
Of course, great answer. Thank you, Tom. And then going back to what you said there, Jeanethe, you were saying it's about the tools and technology in place that kind of allows for that transformation. And clearly the pandemic's forced many organizations and industries to kind of tackle new ways of working and operating, especially within digital transformation. So in your mind, should the major focus now for organizations with respect to digital and technology transformation be on those internal workplace tools and technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the city, we had to rapidly ensure that people were comfortable with collaborative tools that had existed, but hadn't really been as necessary for so much of our workforce, because so much of city operations relies on physical presence in the city. So much work gets done via relationships or walking cube to cube. So using Google Hangouts or Zoom just was hardly used before, and then overnight was a necessity. So what I would encourage all organizations to do at this time is to not forget the people that you're trying to help. You know, don't just pile on new tools for the sake of new tools, but really understand your employees and their needs and what they're trying to accomplish, and do it all in service and support of them, because they're the ones that are going to carry forward the mission from home or in the office whenever we return.
Nice. And then with yourself, Tom, do you think that should be the major focus right now for organizations and yourself?
Very much so. When we started with COVID, you can imagine the information security concerns around a program like ours. Our virtual private network, our VPN, was designed for a minimum number of people who might be traveling or who might be homesick and not able to go into the office. It was not designed for remote work. Mm-hmm. However, back in March, just today, it's 8 months since we've been remote. We went to a 92% remote workforce on that VPN, and bandwidth considerations, the DoD information network considerations, all proved to be challenges in people being able to execute their normal processes from home. Mm-hmm. And just that kind of limitation forced our individuals to rethink how they were engaging with each other and in which ways that they were engaging with each other. Mm-hmm. And then from our organizational point of view, everybody's at home and they see their kids on Google Hangouts and they see they got a free account from Zoom, and it's absolutely awesome. I can talk to my parents in Florida and my sister in Seattle, and why can't we do that at work?
Yeah.
So we have to balance not only the individual's needs and the capabilities that are available out there, but also in our environment, the cybersecurity concerns that come with going to an intensely remote and distributed workforce and sharing the amount and type of information that we have.
Sure, good answer. And then yourself, Mo, obviously this is something very close to what you do with regards to kind of the digital tools and technologies in the workplace. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a general tendency of thinking about projects like digital transformation as a multi-year process that involves sort of a deep understanding and analysis of what's going on a departmental basis, and then connecting the pieces together. If I'm an employee in our customer service operation and I'm hearing about this grandiose plan, that sounds great. But if it doesn't really impact my day-to-day, then I'm not really that interested. And so it goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of what does digital transformation mean for me. It is truly about helping your employees embrace and understand that change can happen now. And it's not these big grandiose plans that will take a long time to happen. They can happen right now in very meaningful ways. Just like my fellow folks here on the call have alluded to, something as simple as Zoom calls or Hangouts already make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And so my biggest piece of advice is, if you're thinking about it today, especially with the push that we've had due to COVID, don't worry too much about the big major plan. Think about the small low-hanging fruits that you can deploy to your team now to make them that much more successful in their day-to-day. Yeah. How do they become more efficient? How do we automate some of their mundane repetitive tasks so that they can upskill themselves and really spend their human cognition on things that are worth more? Help them embrace this notion of working from home. Organization after organization have now said working from home is going to be forever, the likes of Twitter and Microsoft and so forth. And so I think embracing this and not thinking, oh, maybe down the line we'll come back. No, why don't we start implementing programs that will allow them to thrive in this working from home condition? And then, the last two pieces are all around, it's great to try and be a top-down organization where you're pushing automation and digital transformation, but it's that much more meaningful if you empower your own employee core to automate themselves. Give them the tools, and it's not for a lack of solutions. There's tons of them out there that can allow them to automate simple tasks they do all the way to more difficult stuff. Just give them those keys. And then to Tom's point, obviously very important for the military, but I think in general, instilling the sense and importance of security and privacy. Now that much more than ever. Before, okay, you're at the workplace, you can go over and talk to someone, but now we're sharing files like, it's no one's business. So having these come together, allowing it to bubble up, I think, will create for a right successful strategy.
Nice, good answer. Thank you, Mo. And finally, Gaurav, yourself.
Yeah, so for businesses, one consequence of COVID-19 crisis has been a dramatic uptick in the use of digital technologies that help reduce the face-to-face interactions between customers and employees, right? This is everything that you guys just said, so it totally resonates with me on that. And companies have had to respond with extraordinary speed and vigor, in some cases like implementing years worth of digital transformation in a span of just a few months, which is, I guess, what Mo, you were alluding to as well, like now is the time, right? So slow and steady in this case does not win the race in the current crisis situation. So maybe I'll focus a little bit, on a few different set of topics outside of the remote working tools and technologies, because you guys have well covered that. In my mind, first and foremost, in terms of new ways of working, as a company, as an organization, and business leaders, we have to focus on safeguarding customer and employees' mental and physical health and well-being. For example, creating digital contact tracing apps for your customers and employees, or offering free exercise or yoga virtual classes for improving fitness levels. Because that's the front and center, right? Like you got to make sure that you have productive employees, and if they're not fit, you're dead in the water. Then secondly, you got to invest in appropriate policies and technologies, yes, to prepare them for the future of work. So this is not just about enabling them to work remotely. I mean, that obviously needs to happen, but also more importantly, invest in the right training programs to equip your workers with the most relevant skills that promotes the concept of lifelong learning and helps them adapt to the future labor market, because learning doesn't stop once you get out of school, right? I mean, all of us are learning in our everyday job. So we got to focus on that a lot and provide them with the right tools to constantly upgrade their skills. Third is investing in data security. So, Zoom managed to, for example, capitalize on the current pandemic crisis and successfully navigated the rapid scaling of its usage to support large volumes of its customers, but then it also ran into security issues that had to be addressed expediently. So that needs to be kept in mind as well. Omnichannel commerce, I mean, that's a big one, as we are all seeing, right? Like the boundaries between physical and digital is very much morphing now. With the physical locations being shut down, consumers are flocking the online channels to meet their needs. They can buy their groceries or pay their bills online and leave feedback all in one convenient app. So that sort of blending is happening quite a bit, which is more important now than ever. Then finally, this is the most important point, the willingness to experiment and take risks, because adaptability as an organization is a very important health indicator, particularly during times of rapid change, and it can help fuel future growth. So ultimately, I think the companies that will successfully emerge out of this crisis strongly will be the ones who innovate their way through it, using the current crisis as actually an opportunity to digitally transform themselves.
Nice, that's a really good answer. Thank you. And then we've dived deeper into kind of remote work that, as a general for the organization, but you as individual leaders in your kind of respective positions, just how difficult has it been to kind of continue to lead the transformation efforts of your organization with regards to everything kind of from communicating the message to, just getting the job done? It must have been quite it's been a difficult year for everyone involved in most businesses and most industries. But as leaders, how difficult has it been to kind of communicate the change and move forward with that? And perhaps we'll start with you there, Tom.
When it comes to the transformation, digital transformation, I started the effort almost 2 years ago, originally as the Chief Digital Officer. So well before COVID, I was saddled with the task of how do we take this organization from our legacy manual processes into centralized information and more collaborative environment. And prior to COVID, it was an uphill battle as far as convincing that the technologies would actually work, convincing that you can collaborate in a virtual environment, that you can have better access. The democratization of data will enrich and enable everybody's own operations and their own tasks that they have to do. Nobody really wanted to believe it. Nobody would buy into it. And those who did excelled and they supported. They became mouthpieces for the work that we were doing. But the biggest hurdle was that we had in-person meetings. Everybody, all 900 of our 2,000 people were in one area, and we're able to get together and we could have meetings all day long, and you could do all the work that you needed in a meeting. You went to another meeting to do more work so that you could plan for another meeting and do more work in a meeting. COVID forced the hand of everybody. I have a leader who likes to say, if you're virtually present, you're physically absent. And he hasn't been able to say that since COVID happened, because everybody is virtually present. And that leadership and that legacy mindset has grasped the idea of, I can push a button and be in a meeting with somebody. This thing on my phone actually does work. Look at that. I learned how to turn my camera on. Hi, I can see you too. How are you today? So the organization has been forced into embracing these collaborative capabilities to the point of the past couple months that VPN I told you about that wasn't designed to have 2,000 people on it remote, it is now getting fully tasked because of the collaborative capabilities in the Teams environment in the Office 365, the new techniques that we are embracing as an organization has led us to the point and the limits of our technologies, which then drives more technology. We have employees and we have our teammates who want to have more centralized information. They want to have more virtual workspaces. They want to be able to take advantage of the collaboration, the file sharing, the virtual meeting, and the whiteboarding all in one. I want to be able to have it today. Yeah. So it's really turned it around where I was fighting the uphill battle of how can we get these things going, and now the organization is pressing and driving so that we can get more of these capabilities available.
Nice, that's good, Tom. Thank you. And then Jeanethe, with yourself, obviously, there's huge pressure on local government and governments throughout on delivering through COVID. So how's it been in a digital sense for you?
Yeah, I was chuckling a bit as Tom was speaking because I just had this visual of trying to push a rock uphill for so long, and then as soon as COVID hit, it was all of us chasing the rock downhill. Because everyone started to get new expectations and we're going off and getting new softwares and new tools before we could almost keep up with it. And even though we were sending out best practices and sending out the suite that we had, people were just off and running, and it was like catching everybody that had gone loose. It was looking back, it was funny. It was not funny at the time. Yeah. But yeah, as you know, my team and what the digital team has been working towards is just to ensure that the information was as clear and as efficient for our residents as possible. We've been really pushing hard on social media to get the most accurate updates out frequently and figuring out how local we need to get, down to neighborhood zip code, because even citywide numbers are too distant for folks to too often react to. So there's kind of a twofold perspective that I've had to take. From the beginning of the pandemic, I was supporting our CIO in a much broader sense with regard to getting people out the door with laptops, getting VPNs set up, working around the clock just to ensure their operations were meeting the needs. But all the while was this public outreach component of the job. But one of the interesting things that came up kind of in between those two realms, really, the City Hall still needed to service residents. We couldn't actually close our doors to everything. We still needed to provide in-person transactions for those that didn't yet exist online. That's been a priority of my team, but we knew we had 60 plus of those to do, and we were well on the way, but we couldn't do it overnight. So for things like certain registry transactions or payments, we actually had to set up an appointment software to help people get in the door, but also restrict the number of folks that were coming in. So that was another sudden priority for our team to focus on, making sure that people could come in and safely handle that business with the city.
Nice. And then yourself, Gaurav.
Yeah, so I mean, frankly, in the current pandemic-driven era, it's difficult to imagine any company that hasn't embarked on the journey to enable efficient remote working capabilities for their employees. So Pearson was no exception. I mean, with 22,000 employees in 70 plus countries, like I said, we were already kind of working in that remote setup to a large extent. I mean, my team personally was spread out between different states, different geos. So we were already operating in that model. So really, like, when February, March came in, where the lockdown really happened, it didn't feel as big of a jolt from a technology perspective as such. However, there were many other aspects that we had to be mindful of as business leaders to make sure that our teams are productive, and the mindfulness aspect as well is prevalent amongst the team. So a few things that sort of lessons, if you will, that I took away from the last few months of experience. First and foremost, like the business leaders need to step up their game and address some key needs of the team members. One, to me, the biggest one was trust. There had to be like a clear, actionable plan that the team was expecting out of me, both from like an internal ways of working, but also from like the external levers to protect and grow our digital business. And there was a need to share it repeatedly with the team and solicit their ideas to encourage accountability and autonomy. Second was compassion, being empathetic to their needs and stretching my personal limits to offer as much flexibility to them as possible, asking about their family's well-being. Like that type of authentic emotional intelligence, I think served quite rich dividends and hopefully will continue away in the long term. Stability was another aspect. So, communicating with credibility and positivity with the employees to boost engagement and foster transparency. I mean, they really appreciated that a lot. I would say, like, let's not be afraid to repeat the key themes, because it really helps people focus on what they can really control. Yeah. And then finally, hope, optimism is the best stimulus. As I've heard in my prior job back at SAP, one of the leaders used to say that all the time, and I truly believe that there's always a silver lining in the darkest of clouds. You just got to find that and shine a light on it for others to latch on to. So, you know, like I truly believe crisis does not build character; it actually reveals it. So there's no like one playbook for leadership when the stakes are this high as they are in the current times. But you know, nothing drives employee loyalty and engagement more than knowing that my boss really cares about me as a human being. So
yeah, good answer. Thank you, Gaurav. And then yourself, Mo.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to hear you guys' perspective, because they all come from much larger organizations, and so the challenges are substantially more difficult, whether it's a city or a very large organization. For us, we actually started this company just a few months prior to the pandemic, and so it's been really interesting to see the before and after. Sort of what did the world look like up until the end of February, and then post. We would be a huge failure being a tech company that's in the automation space if we hadn't already sort of started the business with transformation built in. It would be just a total fail. So, we had started off already with a mindset of, we are going to have very tangible things for our employee core as it starts to grow. And we went, just to give you a perspective, we went from 4 employees last November to 24 employees just over the course of the last 12 months, because our business has been accelerated due to COVID. But in that time frame, we implemented really 4 key principles. Number 1, over communication of information. We had already started remote, making dashboards available to every team member that understand what's happening across every single department. We do every single Monday, we do a 30-minute all hands huddle where we talk about what's going on, what did we do last week, what are we doing this week. I know these are things that are easier to do for smaller organizations, but I've also seen them implemented across very large organizations, and they are very, very helpful. Town halls where people can discuss plans for the last quarter and this quarter. We have our engineering team produce videos with the latest releases that are going out in product, or marketing will show off what they're doing, just so that we can share this information. And it becomes, we have the central portal that's built on a Google website or Google site that's very just easy to maintain. And then we have one central area where people can go and understand what's going on. So we encourage people to be curious and aware of what's going on across org versus trying to push information down. That's number 1. Number 2, as the employee core is growing, one of the challenges that you face is, when you're a small company, it's sort of easy, especially when you're in an office setting, to see how people are feeling, because you walk and you sort of hear what they have to say. But when you're remote, you have no idea. So we've deployed a platform that allows us to just send out anonymized surveys on a weekly basis. How are you feeling about your work? What could we improve? And so on. And we just sort of monitor and track that over time as sort of a score basis, sort of like an internal NPS, if you will. And then, finally, are we helping make our employees happy working from home, right? Like, we've embraced it. And so, we've given everyone a budget to set up their home office. We've allowed everybody to buy like a really cool machine that they really wanted, and so forth. So it's this whole notion of just embracing and giving them, again, if there's a central theme that I guess I'm going to stick to during this whole talk, is about tangible, examples of quick wins that enable digital transformation automation. It's truly all about just helping your company and your employees be happy and have the tools necessary for them to succeed.
Nice. Cheers, Mo. And then Jeanethe and Tom, you mentioned in earlier statements about struggling kind of with buy-in, pushing the rock up the hill, and trying to convince others to buy into transformations. So it's very kind of typical in patterns of transformation that there is a massive disconnect between the business or the financial, buy-in side of things with IT and with digital. Just how integral is it for organizations to be working closer than ever, especially now, individuals and departments are working more in silos than ever before? And you've obviously had experience of that disconnect. How do you kind of overcome that? And perhaps we'll go back to you, Tom, to start that one off.
So I understand the question. How do we overcome the disconnect between the different departments within the organization, especially now in a remote environment where you're potentially not seeing those people from different organizations?
Yeah.
We're working hard to develop and implement cross-organizational dashboards, just like Mohannad said, where dashboards you can see what is going on within the different departments, and you have an overarching view of the organization's progress towards their individual goals. The way that normal DoD acquisitions work is that each program office is a ship alone at sea with a captain that makes all the decisions, and it's able that the captain of that ship can move it in any direction they want. The same with the program offices have a set budget, set requirements that they need to achieve. They let their contracts and they move in that direction. Today, the integration of our weapon systems mean that those individual program offices have more and more dependencies upon each other. And within the joint program office for the F-35, we have multiple PMOs, and we're moving down the path of making that data available. It's still, with the legacy, understanding the legacy acquisition process, there's still that growing pain and that learning of why do I want to share what's going on? I don't want to tell people what my schedule is. I don't want to tell people how I'm executing my dollars, because it is a growth.
Yeah.
And within DoD and within government and federal government, there has always been that mindset of if I don't execute the budget that I'm given, I won't receive that same budget next year. And at the same time, if others know how I'm executing right now, there's the potential that they would make a business case that their program would be more would benefit from the dollars more than my program would. Mm-hmm. As we can see within the commercial space, and as we can see within industry, even in defense, that kind of mindset has changed in the commercial space. It's changing in the defense industry, and it is starting to change in government, where we can collaborate and the dependencies outweigh that individual need to maintain your own program internally. So with being able to democratize the data and make it available across lines, people get more understanding on how their own efforts affect others and others' efforts are going to affect them. But at the same time, as with any transformation, I'm still getting requests of how can people buy government printers and have them at home so they can print out the slides while they sit in front of the computer. It's a growth, and it's a giant. An aircraft carrier doesn't turn on a dime. It takes a long time to get it moving. But right now, we've seen the rudder come over and the ship has started to turn. Like I mentioned earlier, COVID was the catalyst of it, yeah. And now we're getting into the point of people asking the questions across those lines, where they used to come and sit in the back of a room for an in-person meeting and they could understand what was being said, even though it wasn't their meeting. Today, they have to reach out and they have to ask for that additional information. And with that, the buy-in is being pulled from us more than us trying to push.
Yeah,
it is growth. There's still more to do, and there's still the education piece and organizations like Defense Acquisition University working towards new curricula and outreach to the professional base to understand how that collaboration can work continues on. But with any larger organization, it's not a done deal. And Gaurav, I wish it was something that we could execute quickly, and I wish it was something that we could find a piece and here you go, dashboard, everybody use it, and people see, oh great, dashboard, it's not mine, I don't care. So we have to take those wins that we can find, yeah, and continue that process of education and reinforcement to get across those organizational divides.
Yeah, nice. That's a good answer. And Jeanethe, yourself?
Yeah, I'm envious of that dashboard. I have a design of one sitting in my office rolled up that we never got to put out there, just to showcase really the digital capacity and the IT capacity of all the departments that we service. So we could basically color code it and give a display to leadership to say, this is what we're here for. We need to get everybody up to green. But that's somewhere in the future. I'd say my experience has been over this past year that many departments, although they already knew it, it became incredibly clarified how vital our department was to them. And that's the Department of Innovation and Technology, the IT to digital services. Many of them knew it before, but they're singing our praises. They're coming to us more than ever. They need our support more than ever, and they understand how integral our work is to their success. The unfortunate thing is our department is really at a precarious position. Going into COVID, we had some budgetary issues, and so we've not been able to really backfill some critical roles. In July, the city basically put a hiring freeze in place to secure our budgets. So we're at quite a critical point of a lot of single points of failure and not being able to backfill positions where people are getting burned out or leaving or retiring. So where we're at a point where there's more expectation than ever, more appreciation than ever for the services we provide. Our ability to meet those expectations is going to be quite a challenge. So I'm hoping that this clicks for leadership. I'm hoping that it turns around, but IT operations, I'm not the first nor last to say it's not a sexy thing. It's not something you get PR about, but it is what keeps the lights on and the water running and everything you take for granted. So I'm hoping to see some more top-down support of the criticality of the work that we do.
Nice. And then with you, Mo?
I'm petrified by what I just heard from you, Jeanethe. It's of deep concern that there's that much level of friction, I suppose, in trying to get these things done. And I can only imagine how difficult it is when you're trying to push all of that proverbial rock up the mountain. I mean, look, for us, we're again in a different ball game completely, in that we are a business that offers digital transformation as a service. And for us, this whole notion of the disconnect between IT, that's actually why we exist. Yeah. As a computer science grad and a former programmer who understands very deeply how these organizations run, I can tell you unequivocally that IT just sucks. And this is 100% true. IT tends to overcomplicate really what needs to be delivered because of a myriad of different reasons. But the reality is, the world that exists today within digital transformation and automation, you may have heard about a lot of solutions called low code or no code. That is existent and growing for a reason, because digital transformation with IT is very difficult. And so empowering individuals themselves to be able to build their own automated processes, again, they don't have to be major projects. They could be something as simple as, we're just doing a project right now with a client that's automating their entire accounts payable process. So you take something that is so old and archaic, manual invoices being incoming and then having to process them in some capacity. There are solutions that will allow you today to disintermediate from these points of friction, whether it's IT or engineering or security or whatnot, so you can try and at least get a solution up and running very quickly. That is frankly the foundation of our business. It is to try and get away from having anything to do with IT as much as possible. And we're seeing deployments become really successful because we've empowered people with understanding that things like robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning are incredible high-level topics to think about, but you don't need to get to be too worried about the complexity of how they all get configured and managed. There are ways of bypassing all of these sort of difficult hurdles.
No, nice answer. And then finally, Gaurav, yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, working together and leveraging each other's strengths is now more important than ever, especially for business and technology, right? Like, the current unprecedented times call for a more deeper and more proactive collaboration between business and tech to address the needs of employees, customers, partners, what have you. Case in point, I mean, tech can be a significant enabler of remote working. However, if it's not rolled out in a very deliberate manner and actively managed against a set of desired business outcomes, it can be fairly disruptive and unproductive. But even if we look beyond just the remote working aspects, when you focus on the core business, so like for example, I mean, I lead the e-commerce business globally for Pearson, and we routinely launch new products for the customers to be able to discovered and purchased digitally and then consumed as well. Now, creating and launching these innovative new digital products to capitalize on the strong wave of digital consumption actually requires a very close partnership between a multitude of different teams. So it's not just product management and tech. It's like customer support, marketing, sales, legal, Wrk, etc. I mean, you name it. So I'll give you an example. I mean, we about in July came together, a few of these teams, and it was just an idea. We said, okay, like, let's focus on this specific business vertical. Technology actually was in that case, and we said, wouldn't it be nice to offer sort of digital learning courses for our audience to be specialized in certain skills, like whether it's AWS or Cisco certification, etc. And then like that whole team came together so quickly, that big cross-functional team, end to end, that, you know, in a matter of just 3 months, we managed to take it from soup to nuts, like from idea to actually a product, and then, you know, making it sellable digitally on our site, on the e-commerce store. And you know, this fantastic collaboration happened during prime COVID times, where every member of this team was like in some different part of the world, but somehow still banded together on a daily basis. And you know, we used to have this like agile Scrum based execution, and now, you know, we are monitoring its performance now that it's launched in the market on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. So, and you know, we use dashboards, we use, you know, all the agile execution principles, and all of that is just coming together so beautifully that sometimes we're like, it's actually surprising how we managed to pull it all together so quickly. But again, perhaps a function of just how the company was set up even before COVID, so that it wasn't a very jarring experience for us. So yeah, I mean, that's been my personal experience so far.
Nice. And then Mo, with the next question, I'm going to kind of angle it a little bit differently for you, because obviously, like you said, you work in the business of providing these kind of digital transformation solutions. So the next question is more about kind of emerging technologies within business and, like, you know, companies onboarding tools and tech. You're in kind of the business of automation. Why should businesses be looking to incorporate these processes right now more than ever?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that I have to sing the praises of automation. You know, the automation industry raked in $11 billion last year. And so it's a growing industry. It's being deployed everywhere. You don't need to look very far, then look at the stock ticker of ServiceNow or Pegasystems and see the inflection point of these businesses. It's incredible what they can do. You know, for us, really, the thesis around Wrk and why we exist is because we believe that the platforms that exist today, whether it's robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of these incredible technologies are actually really quite complex to deploy. Yeah. And we believe that, you know, you're talking in your question about what is sort of like the next emerging trend or technology. For us, we see that as an abstraction layer on top of these technologies, which is, sorry for the shameless plug, but that's basically what Wrk is. Yeah. Wrk is an abstraction layer on top of RPA, AI, machine learning, crowdsourcing, hybrid automation, manned bot and unmanned bot, and so forth, and bringing all of these incredible technologies and capabilities to you without having to worry about the very complex configuration of them and their rather inflexibility as your business and processes change. So for us, we've been seeing this trend emerge now for the last year and a half. We've seen the rise of RPA and some of the incredible things that they can do. You know, I see entire businesses, especially in financial services, and it's incredible the level of depth with which they've deployed automation, where you think you're dealing with a teller who's like dealing with your money, but it's not. It's actually all unattended bots that are completing some pretty incredible and sophisticated tasks. You know, over the last few years, we've seen the rise of many artificial intelligence companies that have, again, developed some pretty incredible models. What a lot of people don't understand about AI is you need to be able to train the machine in one very specific subsector of a function for it to be able to deliver something meaningful, which is fine. But then that thing that it delivers cannot apply across multiple different organizations. It needs to be retaught and relearned. And so, you know, removing this complexity, I think we're going to start seeing hopefully the rise of more and more companies like us that are trying to remove the complexity of automation so that they can be a lot more easily integrated and away from the pesky hands of those people in IT.
Nice. I mean, that's really good. We had a presentation earlier today and a question came through in the Q&A regarding kind of how an organization can onboard machine learning. You know, if they've got none of that capability, how do they go about starting it? So it's a clear kind of obstacle and challenge for quite a few organizations in identifying how to bring that in and, you know, understanding it. So the simplification of such is great. So good work. Gaurav, with yourself, what kind of emerging technology has Pearson kind of been paying attention to or onboarding over the last few years?
Yeah, so I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, some of the technologies that we have been leveraging, on the e-commerce side. I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as emerging anymore. Like, I mean, they're starting to fairly, mature and stabilize at this point. So not really cutting edge as such, but, if you just look at them through the lens of like being useful in the business context, I would say things like, we have started to dabble in AI-enabled chatbots to truly enhance and scale our customer support and drive automation, because again, our business is increasingly global, and an automated chatbot really helps. To most point, like people can't really tell these days whether it's actual person sitting behind or a chatbot, because you can train the chatbot in very specific skills. Second is big data. So, driving business analytics, creating these dashboards to gain vital insights that are needed to run the business on a day-to-day. I mean, this came in really, really handy when as I was saying earlier, we monitor the business performance of all our product launches, the big ones, on a daily basis. So it came in really handy to bring that cross-functional team together, and we were like literally analyzing every step of the user journey and trying to find optimization points. Because every little 0.1% increase in conversion has a disproportionate impact on your top and bottom line. Then I would say the experimentation and user testing tools, like Optimizely, Google Optimize, or Hotjar, etc. So you can actually truly monitor your customers' behavior and pursue their journey once they are on your site. And again, try to experiment. As I was saying in one of the earlier questions, the goal is to continuously experiment and then continuously improve your touch points with them and remove friction as much as possible. And then, of course, goes without saying all the collaboration tools, whether it's Teams or Zoom or Google Talk or telepresence. I mean, they have been just phenomenal, and can barely imagine now a world even post-COVID. I don't think we can survive without them.
Nice. And then Tom, with yourself, you've touched on the difficulties of kind of the buying side of that, but has there been tools and technologies that you've kind of onboarded in recent times?
I think of most note would be RPA, where we implemented UiPath bot in. We were able to show proof of concept of that bot working on our network. We have a dedicated joint virtual environment for the program office, given the nature of our data as well as the foreign partners that we have within the environment. So we demonstrated that the bot could operate within our environment, and that it could also access data, information, and files that exist on our vendors' networks and our vendors' sites. So that's the most useful and effective technology that we've been able to introduce. But at the same time, that within our environment, we don't have as much of the leeway to go out and bring in cybersecurity professionals who understand robotic process automation. And we don't have the same flexibility to go out and get cybersecurity professionals who fully understand how cloud capabilities work and how the AWS and the Azure environment work, and from a cybersecurity point of view, the difference between IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So although we've been able to pilot some of the capabilities within our environment, and we've been able to make the business case on how those technologies will benefit our users, we still run into that final implementation and that authorization to use those technologies within a DoD network, as well as with the data associated with building an F-35 or a fifth-generation fighter aircraft. So the RPA has been a big one, as well as C3.ai and the AI modeling capabilities. We've implemented a master data management platform using the C3 tools, as well as the Systicon and the Opus suite of AI and data analytics tool suites. Bringing all of those together, which had originally been piecemealed in parts of the organization or used in other services, whether it was in the Navy or the Surface Navy or in the Air Force programs, we've been able to bring those together, centralize them, and centralize the data that underlies them. So continuing to make that data available, aggregate the data, and make enough data available to make it worthwhile is part of the journey that we continue on.
Good stuff. And finally, with yourself, Jeanethe.
Yeah, for the large percentage of the city's employee population, really the focus has been getting their comfort level up with already well-emerged technologies like collaborative tools like the Google Suite. So that's been a big effort of training and awareness and sending out best practices on those. But for my team's purposes, what we've really leaned into heavily, although we already were before, was really focusing on the translation capability of the website as well as the accessibility of it. We knew coming off of a Drupal 8, Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 migration a year ago that we were going to have some work to do to catch up to make sure we're meeting AA standards. But we've been working on that pretty hard for the last year or so. And we knew, like, for example, tab navigation wasn't functioning across the site. And when we're in times of a pandemic, when people need access to information more critically and urgently than ever, we just couldn't leave anyone behind with that. So
good stuff. And then final question to kind of wrap things up here, and if we could just give kind of our 2 cents worth on this, how much do you think that the pandemic is going to change organizational structure and models in a sense of kind of digital technology transformation? What can we expect to see on frontline innovation given the pandemic? And perhaps if we go back to you to kick that one off, Jeanethe.
Sure. It's going to be really interesting to see how it affects cities, because I think that there's going to be what should happen and what many people know needs to happen, and then the reality of what's possible based on budgets. It's going to severely impact our economy for years to come, and the city municipal budgets rely on that. So I hope to see things become more efficient. In order to become a more efficient, collaborative organization, you need a strong technology department. You just need a strong department that isn't strong in the sense of how much weight it carries, but its ability to support the organization, to manage those relationships, to roll out new software, to support legacy systems through that transformation. So it's really hard to predict what's going to happen to municipalities, but I think they're going to be harmed initially, and I hope that out of that darkness comes a real change in the next few years.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's looking at the positives, and I think Gaurav mentioned earlier about the silver linings, and it's forcing us to kind of pivot and change and adapt. So, a lot of good will come out of the bad as well. So, nice point there. And then with yourself, Mo, your opinion on that?
Yeah, look, we're seeing the transformation already as it is. I don't think that we really have to predict it. It's happening now. We have a frontline view of this within the organizations that we're dealing with. I can tell you that pre-COVID, our entry point into organizations was sort of the C-level suite, because it was a conversation about building internal efficiencies and, reducing costs and so forth. Post-COVID, it's been departmental leaders themselves that are coming to us and saying, I have these 5 processes that need to be automated. How do I go about doing that? And how can we use tool sets for that? And what's interesting is even the shift of budget, where the money is coming from to pay for some of these programs are things that you would traditionally not see. Like we see advertising budget actually being cut to make room for digital transformation, or operational budget that was going for tooling around, NPS or anything like that being funneled back and put into automation. So it is so top of mind for almost every single organizational leader, and they have no choice. Like this is one of those things where you can't wait to make it happen. It needs to happen now. So we're seeing, major adoption across the board. Even organizations that would, historically have been very resistant to change have had no choice but to embrace it. So there's sort of a big gold rush into automation right now. There is perhaps a little bit of confusion about what is the best avenue to try and go and implement. There in some cases is still some resistance, because people do think in some cases that they will go back to how work used to be and working in an office, and they're delusional in my opinion. But I think it's exciting times for the automation industry. It is certainly creating a much more, in my opinion, flatter organizations, because senior leadership cannot oversee the digital transformation across 20 or 30 different departments. I think they're empowering their own individual leaders to make those decisions and allowing them to unlock budgets for that.
Thanks, Mo. And then Gaurav?
Yeah, so look, I think, first of all, remote working is here to stay. Many of these employees who are working remotely today, I don't think they're going to return back to an office space, even post-pandemic. So in many cases, this might be the new normal. And this will call for continued investment in scaling remote work enabling technologies, just so they work much better and continuously improve the productivity. I think the budget allocation will likely also evolve in companies. So teams already operating very effectively in a remote setup, I think things like business trips likely are expected to decrease, and some of those T&E dollars may flow into other areas like customer experience improvement or R&D or technology. And I think also there'll be a renewed focus on driving business outcomes versus, and this is more for the business leaders. So they'll be looking at their team members to drive more business outcomes as opposed to judging them by their time. So empowering the employees, energizing them around a common mission, and measuring the outcome of their work, I think will be critical moving forward. So despite the terrible tragedy caused by this pandemic, I think it's also unlocking innovation. Yeah. And these new ways of working more efficiently will likely change the nature of the workplace fundamentally, and will make companies more effective. And frankly, at this point, it's either innovate or perish anyway. So I think the choice is clear.
Nice. And Tom, final thoughts from yourself?
Well, it's clear that technology is going to continue to evolve, and it's going to continue to support our people wherever they are, whatever they are. Jeanethe talked about the municipalities, and Mo talked about automation and budgets. Gaurav touched on the budgets. He touched on the differences. The Type X manager is finally going to go away, and that need, if I don't see you, you're not working, isn't going to be there anymore because they're not going to be able to succeed. The Type Y manager is going to be out front because he and she are going to be able to see the value of the people that are coming. I think the biggest thing, not only the technology affecting municipalities, but the footprint. Yeah. We've all touched on, we've all noticed you're not going to go back to the office. Now it's going to be the exception is going into the office, and you have to have a good reason of why you got to go in the office. Travel, already we've limited our travel because of the pandemic, but at the same time, now we're limiting travel because of there's no reason for you to go to that unless it's classified. You don't need to travel for it. And then the final piece is hiring. Because today and pre-pandemic, I was limited to the Washington, D.C. area, Pax River, Maryland, and Dayton, Ohio, because those were our main concentrations. And I needed to find somebody who was either there or was willing to move there. Now I can look all over the country. I can look at the places like Austin, Texas, or Orlando, Florida, or California, and find the right people that can support the mission that we have. And the virtual office technologies that come out will be able to make them just as included as anybody else. So that not only allows us to find the right skill sets, it also allows us to open that aperture for diversity and inclusion within our workforce, which is what's going to enable all of our organizations to continue to succeed from different points of view, and really unleash the workforce and the people that make all of our technologies happen.
Nice. Well, that wraps up the questions for the panel. Tom, Mo, Gaurav, Jeanethe, thank you so much